I still remember the sickening crack of my head against the marble floor, followed by the warm gush between my legs. My water had broken at my sister Amanda's wedding reception. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard her scream, "You ruined my wedding! You always need attention!" I looked up expecting my father to help me. Instead, his face contorted with rage as he grabbed the nearby camera tripod. The last thing I saw was the metal pole swinging toward my head as I desperately tried to protect my unborn baby. I never thought my own family would turn against me on what should have been one of the happiest days of our lives. My name is Melody, and at 32 years old, I was finally about to become a mother after years of trying with my husband Jack. My sister Amanda, 4 years younger than me, had always been the golden child in our family. Growing up, she was the one who brought home perfect report cards, won beauty pageants, and made our father proud. I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who was expected to support Amanda's dreams while keeping my own modest and practical. Our mother passed away when I was 12 and Amanda was 8. After that, our father Gerald became even more focused on appearances and success. He was a prominent businessman in our town, known for his ruthless negotiation skills and his pristine reputation. Nothing mattered more to him than the family image and his standing in the community. Amanda thrived under his attention, molding herself into exactly what he wanted her to be. I, on the other hand, constantly felt like I was falling short of his impossible standards. By the time Amanda announced her engagement to Ryan, the son of one of the wealthiest families in the state, I had mostly made peace with my place in the family hierarchy. Jack had helped me see that I deserved love and respect, regardless of my father's approval. We had created our own little world together, and now we were expanding it with the addition of our baby. The pregnancy had been unexpected, but absolutely welcomed by both of us. Jack treated me like I was carrying the most precious cargo in the world. When Amanda set her wedding date, I was already 5 months pregnant. By the time the big day arrived, I would be 9 months along, practically ready to pop. I suggested to Amanda that perhaps it would be better if I attended simply as a guest rather than as a bridesmaid. Amanda had smiled tightly and said, "I need my sister standing up there with me, Melody. It's tradition. Just try not to steal focus with that baby bump." The weeks leading up to the wedding were filled with passive-aggressive comments from my sister. When the bridesmaid dresses needed to be altered to accommodate my growing belly, Amanda sighed dramatically about the extra cost and how the pictures would look unbalanced. During the rehearsal dinner, she introduced me to Ryan's family as her sister, who couldn't wait for her own special day. The implication that I had intentionally gotten pregnant around her wedding was clear to everyone. Jack had encouraged me to participate, hoping that the shared experience might help heal some of the rifts in our family. He was always the optimist, believing that deep down, Amanda and Gerald really did love me. His own family was so warm and supportive that he couldn't quite grasp the cold, conditional nature of mine. The morning of Amanda's wedding, I woke up feeling strange. There was a dull ache in my lower back, and I felt occasional tightening across my abdomen. I dismissed it as Braxton Hicks contractions, those practice contractions that had been coming and going for weeks. The baby wasn't due for another week and a half, and first babies were usually late anyway, according to my doctor. Besides, there was no way I was going to miss the wedding and prove Amanda right about me seeking attention. I carefully applied my makeup, styled my hair, and squeezed into the empire waist bridesmaid dress that did little to conceal my enormous belly. When I arrived at the church, Amanda was already in full bride mode, directing everyone around her with military precision. "There you are," she said when she saw me. I was starting to think Yod gone into labor just to upstage me. I forced a smile. "I wouldn't dream of it. Today is all about you, Amanda." For a moment her expression softened, and I caught a glimpse of the little sister I'd once been close to, before our mother's death, before our father had pitted us against each other in subtle but devastating ways. She reached out and briefly squeezed my hand. "Thanks for being here," she said. "I know it's not easy in your condition." That small moment of connection gave me hope that perhaps the day would bring us closer together. I should have known better. The wedding ceremony itself was picture perfect. Amanda was stunning in her designer gown, and Ryan looked genuinely in love as they exchanged vows. I stood at the altar with the other bridesmaids, shifting my weight from foot to foot as my back pain intensified. Several times during the service, I had to take deep breaths through what I was now starting to suspect were early contractions, but I was determined not to draw attention away from the bride. At the reception, things began to unravel. During the formal photographs, Amanda positioned me in the back row, partly hidden behind the other bridesmaids, despite my role as sister of the bride. When I gently suggested that perhaps I should be standing closer to her, she snapped, "We need to think about composition, Melody." The photographer agreed with me that we should minimize your presence. The photographer, a young man who seemed intimidated by Amanda, nodded quickly. "The light color of your dress against your condition draws the eye immediately. It's better to keep you in the background for the formal shots." I swallowed my hurt and did as instructed, plastering on a smile for the cameras. By the time we entered the reception hall, the contractions were coming regularly, though still far apart. I found my seat at the family table and tried to focus on staying calm. Jack had been called away on an emergency work situation that morning, but had promised to join us later. I desperately wished he were there with me. During the dinner, Amanda gave a speech thanking everyone for coming. When she got to me, she smiled tightly. "And thank you to my sister Melody for making it here today. She always knows how to make an entrance and ensure everyone notices her." Her little joke earned uncomfortable laughter from the guests, who were all too aware of the tension between us. I excused myself and retreated to the bathroom, locking myself in a stall as tears threatened to fall. I pulled out my phone and called Jack. "Hey, honey," he answered, the sound of papers rustling in the background. "I'm still tied up here, but I'm making progress. How are things going?" "Not great," I admitted, my voice shaking. "Amanda is being Amanda, and I'm pretty sure I'm having real contractions now." "What?" Jack sounded alarmed. "How far apart are they?" "I don't know, maybe 20 minutes. I'm trying to time them, but it's hard with everything going on. They don't hurt too badly yet, so I think we're still in early stages." "I'm going to wrap this up as quickly as possible and get there," he promised. "I have something important to tell you anyway, a surprise. Just hang in there, okay? Try to find a place to rest. And if the contractions get closer than 15 minutes apart, go to the hospital regardless of what your sister says." After we hung up, I splashed cold water on my face and returned to the reception. Amanda immediately cornered me by the dessert table. "Where have you been?" she hissed. "People have been asking about you, and it looks suspicious when the sister of the bride disappears for 20 minutes. "I was in the bathroom," I replied. "I'm 9 months pregnant, Amanda. My bladder isn't exactly cooperative right now." Her eyes narrowed. "Are you trying to guilt me? Because if you're not up to fulfilling your duties today, you should have declined being in the wedding party." Something in me snapped. After years of shrinking myself to avoid conflict, of accepting Amanda's barbs and our father's clear preference, I finally stood up for myself. "You know what, Amanda?" I said, keeping my voice low but firm. "I've spent my entire life stepping back so you could shine. I've supported you, celebrated you, and loved you despite how dismissively you treat me. I'm here today, in pain and uncomfortable, because I wanted to be part of your special day. But I'm done being your emotional punching bag." Amanda's face flushed with anger. "How dare you make this about you? It's my wedding day." "Yes, it's your wedding day," I acknowledged. "And I'm trying my best to make it special for you. But that doesn't give you the right to treat me like I'm nothing." By now, several guests had noticed our heated exchange and were watching curiously. Amanda's eyes darted around, and I could see her becoming increasingly agitated by the audience. "You're making a scene," she whispered furiously. "You've always been jealous of me, and now you're trying to ruin the most important day of my life." "I'm not trying to ruin anything," I said, feeling another contraction beginning to build. "I just want a little basic respect." Amanda stepped closer, her face inches from mine. "You want respect?" she spat. "How about respecting me enough not to show up looking like you're about to give birth on my wedding day?" "I don't control when my baby decides to come, Amanda," I replied, trying to breathe through the contraction. "And for the record, I offered to attend as a guest, but you insisted I be in the wedding party. That's when it happened." Amanda, seeing that she was losing control of the situation and that guests were now openly staring, deliberately pushed me with both hands. I was caught completely off guard, already unsteady with my altered center of gravity. I stumbled backward, my heel catching on the edge of the dance floor, and fell hard onto the marble floor. The impact sent a shock of pain through my body, and immediately I felt a rush of warm fluid between my legs. My water had broken, creating a visible puddle on the pristine white floor of the reception venue. A collective gasp went up from the guests. For a moment, the entire room fell silent. Then Amanda screamed, "Oh my God, you ruined my wedding. You had to make this about you, didn't you? You ruined my marriage." I was in shock, both from the fall and from the reality that my labor had officially begun. I tried to get up, one hand clutching my belly protectively, the other reaching out for support. That's when I saw my father pushing through the crowd of onlookers. Relief flooded through me. Surely now, seeing his pregnant daughter on the floor, Gerald would step in and help me. But as he approached, I saw not concern on his face, but fury. "What have you done?" he demanded, looming over me. "Do you have any idea how this looks?" "Dad," I gasped. My water broke. "I need to get to the hospital." Instead of offering assistance, Gerald turned to the stunned guests. "My daughter has always had a flair for drama," he announced with a tight smile. "Please, everyone, continue enjoying the reception. The staff will clean this up immediately." Then, turning back to me, he grabbed my arm roughly. "Get up," he hissed. "You've embarrassed us enough." "I can't believe you're worried about embarrassment right now," I said, wincing as another contraction hit. Amanda pushed me. "I need medical attention, not a lecture about family image." That's when Gerald completely lost control. His eyes darted wildly around the room until they landed on the photographer's equipment nearby. In one swift movement, he grabbed a camera tripod that had been set up for the reception video. "You've ruined our honor," he shouted, and before I could process what was happening, he swung the metal tripod toward my head. The impact was explosive. Pain bloomed across my temple, and I felt warm blood trickling down my face, mixing with the amniotic fluid on the floor. Guests screamed and someone yelled for security. Through my blurred vision, I saw Amanda standing beside our father, her wedding dress pristine white against the chaos shed created. "You've ruined our honor," she echoed, pointing an accusing finger at me as I lay bleeding on the floor. I curled protectively around my belly, desperate to shield my unborn child from further harm, dizzy with pain and betrayal. Just as blackness threatened to overtake my vision, the reception hall doors burst open. The next few minutes were a blur of activity and noise. Through my daze, I recognized Ryan's mother Barbara kneeling beside me, her designer dress soaking up the mixture of blood and amniotic fluid on the floor. She was shouting instructions to someone to call an ambulance, while pressing a cloth napkin against my bleeding head. "Is the baby okay?" I gasped, gripped by another contraction that seemed to squeeze my insides with an iron fist. "Try to stay still, dear," Barbara said, her voice surprisingly gentle. "Help is coming." I looked around for my father and sister, expecting that the shock of what had happened would have snapped them back to reality. Instead, I saw Gerald addressing the horrified wedding guests, his voice carrying across the now silent reception hall. "My daughter Melody has been struggling with emotional problems for some time," he announced, straightening his tie as if discussing a minor inconvenience. "The stress of her pregnancy has clearly made her unstable. I'm deeply sorry that she chose to disrupt Amanda's special day in this manner." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Even now, with me bleeding on the floor, my father was more concerned with saving face than with my well-being or that of his grandchild. Across the room, Amanda was being comforted by her new husband Ryan, who looked shocked and confused by the entire situation. She was sobbing dramatically into his shoulder, while casting glances at the guests to ensure they were witnessing her distress. The paramedics arrived within minutes, quickly assessing my condition and loading me onto a stretcher. As they wheeled me through the reception hall, I caught one last glimpse of the wedding party. The celebration was cautiously resuming, with the DJ announcing the couple's first dance, while staff hurriedly cleaned up the evidence of what had happened. Neither my father nor Amanda made any move to accompany me to the hospital. In the ambulance, I tried repeatedly to call Jack, but my calls went straight to voicemail. The pain of contractions was intensifying, coming every 10 minutes now, and the paramedics were concerned about both the head injury and the baby's condition after the fall. Mrs. Walker, the female paramedic, said, "Using my married name, I'm going to need you to try to stay calm. Your blood pressure is very high, which isn't good for you or the baby. We're taking you to St. Mary's Hospital, and they've already been notified to prepare for your arrival." I nodded, wincing as the motion sent fresh pain through my injured head. My thoughts were a chaotic mess of fear and betrayal. How could Amanda have pushed me? How could my father have hit me? And where was Jack when I needed him most? At the hospital, things moved quickly. The emergency room doctor ordered immediate stitches for the gash on my temple, while an obstetrician monitored the baby's heartbeat, which showed signs of distress. I kept trying Jack's number between contractions, growing increasingly desperate as each call went unanswered. "Mrs. Walker, we need to discuss your options," the obstetrician, Dr. Patel, said seriously. "The baby is showing signs of distress, likely due to the trauma of your fall. Your contractions are progressing, but not quickly enough given the baby's condition. I'm recommending an emergency C-section." Terror washed over me. "But my husband isn't here yet," I protested. "I can't do this alone." Dr. Patel's expression was sympathetic but firm. "I understand this is frightening, but we need to prioritize your baby's health. The longer we wait, the greater the risk." Tears streamed down my face as I signed the consent forms with shaking hands. I couldn't stop thinking about my previous miscarriage 2 years earlier, how Jack and I had grieved together, how we'd promised ourselves we wouldn't take any chances with this pregnancy. Now here I was, alone and injured, about to undergo major surgery while my baby was in distress. As the nurses prepared me for the operating room, I overheard one of them speaking to another in the hallway. "Did you hear about the pregnant woman from the wedding? She's the one who had some kind of meltdown and interrupted her sister's ceremony. Apparently she has mental health issues." My heart sank as I realized the story my father had crafted was already spreading. With my phone temporarily confiscated for the surgery preparation, I had no way to reach Jack or anyone who might support me. He had never felt more alone or more afraid. Just as they were about to wheel me into the operating room, I glimpsed 2 familiar figures approaching the nurse's station. My father and Amanda, still in her wedding dress, though she'd thrown a coat over it. Instead of coming to check on me, they appeared to be deep in conversation with the hospital administrator, gesturing emphatically as they spoke. The last thing I heard before the doors closed behind me was my father's authoritative voice. Given her history of instability, we're concerned about her ability to make decisions for herself or the baby. As her family, we're requesting to be kept informed of all medical decisions. When I awakened in the recovery room, the first words out of my mouth were, "My baby? Is my baby okay?" The nurse checking my vitals barely looked up from her chart. "Your son is in the NICU. Hes stable but requires monitoring." My son. I had a son. Despite everything, joy bubbled up through the fog of anesthesia and pain. "When can I see him?" I asked, attempting to sit up and immediately regretting it as pain shot through my abdomen. "The doctor will need to clear you first," the nurse replied, her tone noticeably cool. "And there are some concerns about visitation that need to be addressed." "Concerns? What concerns?" I demanded, fully alert now. "What's wrong with my baby?" The nurse hesitated, then said, "A social worker will be in to speak with you shortly." She left before I could ask any more questions. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of what was happening. My son was alive but in intensive care. Jack was still unreachable. And apparently there were concerns about me visiting my own child. None of it made sense. An hour later, a woman in her 50s with a clipboard and a practiced expression of neutrality entered my room. "Mrs. Walker, I'm Susan Langley from Hospital Social Services," she introduced herself. "I'm here to discuss the incident at the wedding and the temporary custody restrictions while we assess the situation." "Temporary custody restrictions?" I echoed in disbelief. "What are you talking about?" Miss Langley consulted her notes. "We have statements from your father and sister regarding an episode of violent behavior you exhibited at your sister's wedding. Given your head injury and the postpartum period, The hospital is exercising caution regarding unsupervised contact with the infant. My heart pounded painfully in my chest. This can't be happening, I thought. They were the ones who attacked me. That's not what happened, I protested, my voice shaking. My sister pushed me deliberately, and I fell. Then my father hit me with a tripod. I was the victim, not the perpetrator. Miss Langley regarded me with evident skepticism. Mrs. Walker, we have multiple witnesses who describe you as having an emotional outburst that disrupted the wedding. Your father and sister are concerned about your history of emotional instability. I have no history of emotional instability, I argued, tears of frustration welling in my eyes. This is insane. I need to speak to my husband immediately, and I need to see my son. Your husband has been notified, Miss Langley said, checking her notes again. However, he hasn't arrived yet. Your father mentioned that your husband has been increasingly concerned about your behavior during the pregnancy. The realization of what was happening hit me like a physical blow. My father and Amanda were systematically cutting me off from my support system and painting me as mentally unstable. They were trying to control access to my baby. I need my phone, I insisted. I need to call my husband myself. Your personal effects appear to be missing, Miss Langley informed me. Your father thought perhaps they were left at the wedding venue. He'll bring them when he visits tomorrow. I felt like I was trapped in a nightmare. My phone, wallet, everything that connected me to the outside world was conveniently missing. I was completely at the mercy of a family who had just demonstrated how little they cared for my well-being. Later that evening, as I drifted in and out of sleep, I overheard voices in the hallway outside my room. I recognized Amanda's sharp tones immediately. She's always been attention-seeking, but this crossed a line, she was saying, deliberately disrupting my wedding like that. The doctors believe the postpartum period will be particularly risky, my father's voice added. Given her emotional fragility, we're concerned about the baby's safety. We've already spoken with Jack's parents, Amanda continued. They were shocked to learn about Melody's outburst. Apparently she's been hiding her instability from them too. Gerald lowered his voice, but I could still make out his words. The business deal with Ryan's family is hanging by a thread now. The embarrassment Melody caused could cost us millions. Not to mention what this has done to your new marriage. Ryan thinks we should distance ourselves from her, at least for now, Amanda replied. He's worried about the family drama affecting our relationship. I've always been too soft with Melody, Gerald said, his tone hardening. Letting her make her own choices clearly was a mistake. It's time I took a more direct approach to managing her behavior. I strained to hear more, but they moved further down the hallway. My mind raced with fear and confusion. What did they mean by managing my behavior? And why couldn't Jack reach me? A horrible thought occurred to me. What if they had somehow intercepted him, told him lies about what had happened? That night, a different nurse came to check my vitals. She was younger than the day nurse, with kind eyes that showed genuine concern when she saw my tears. First baby? She asked gently as she checked my blood pressure. I nodded, wiping my eyes. Hess in the NICU, and they won't let me see him. And I can't reach my husband. The nurse, whose name tag read Tara, frowned slightly. That's unusual. New mothers are generally encouraged to visit their babies in the NICU, unless what? I prompted when she hesitated. Tara lowered her voice. Unless there's some kind of security concern or custody issue. She glanced at my chart and her frown deepened. Is there someone I can call for you? Family or friends? My husband, I said eagerly. But I don't have my phone and I can't remember his number. It's always just saved in my contacts. Tara seemed to make a decision. She pulled a cell phone from her pocket. I can let you use mine for a quick call. Just don't tell anyone I did this, okay? With shaking hands, I dialed Jack's office number, the only one I could remember. It was after hours, but I hoped someone might still be there, or that I could leave a message. To my surprise, the night security guard answered. Smith Properties security desk. Hi, this is Melody Walker, Jack's wife, I said quickly. I'm trying to reach my husband. It's an emergency. There was a pause on the other end. Mrs. Walker? The guard sounded confused. Mr. Walker never came in today. We got a call saying he had a family emergency and wouldn't be in the office. My blood ran cold. Jack had told me he was going to the office to handle an emergency situation. If he hadn't gone there, where was he? And who had called to say he had a family emergency? "Do you know who called to say he wouldn't be in?" I asked urgently. "I believe it was his father, in-law," the guard replied. "Said there was some situation with his daughter." The room seemed to spin around me as the implications sank in. My father had deliberately kept Jack away, had lied to ensure I'd be alone and vulnerable. But why? What could possibly be worth destroying his daughter's life for? As Tara took back her phone, promising to help me see my baby as soon as possible, a cold determination replaced my fear. I didn't know what game my family was playing, but I knew one thing for certain. No one was going to keep me from my son. True to her word, Nurse Tara helped me see my baby early the next morning. She arrived with a wheelchair before the day shift began, explaining that Shed cleared it with the night pediatrician on duty in the NICU. "Well, need to be quick," she whispered as she wheeled me through the quiet hallways. The social worker's notes say you shouldn't have unsupervised access, but that's ridiculous for a new mother with no actual history of concerning behavior. The NICU was a softly lit room filled with incubators and monitoring equipment. Tara guided my wheelchair to a station near the back, where a tiny bundle lay connected to several monitors. My breath caught in my throat as I saw my son for the first time. He was so small, his skin slightly yellowish under the bilirubin lights. A breathing tube assisted his tiny lungs, and monitoring wires traced patterns across his chest. Despite all this, he was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Noah," I whispered, the name Jack and I had chosen weeks earlier. "Hello, Noah." Tara adjusted my wheelchair so I could reach through the incubator ports to touch my son. His skin was impossibly soft, and when my finger gently stroked his palm, his tiny fingers reflexively curled around it. Tears flowed freely down my face, a mixture of love, fear, and fierce determination. "Hez having some breathing difficulties," Tara explained quietly, "and his blood sugar has been unstable. But the doctors are optimistic. Hez a fighter." Like his mother, I thought, suddenly filled with a strength I hadn't known I possessed. No matter what my father and sister were planning, I would fight for my son with everything I had. "Mrs. Walker?" A deep voice interrupted my thoughts. I looked up to see a security guard standing at the entrance to the NICU, accompanied by my father and a man in a suit I didn't recognize. "This visit isn't authorized," the guard said apologetically. "I'm going to have to ask you to return to your room." I clutched Noah's tiny hand, unwilling to let go. "Hez my son," I protested. "I have every right to see him." My father stepped forward, his expression a practiced mask of concern. "Melody, you're not thinking clearly. The doctors have advised against this until you've been properly evaluated." The man in the suit, who I now realized must be a lawyer, nodded gravely. "Mrs. Walker, there are temporary measures in place for the baby's protection. Please don't make this more difficult than it needs to be." Tara stood her ground beside my wheelchair. "I'm her nurse, and I authorized this visit. There is no medical reason why this mother shouldn't see her child." My father fixed Tara with a cold stare. "Your supervisor has already been notified of your breach of protocol. I suggest you remove yourself from this situation before it affects your employment status." Tara's face paled, but she didn't move. "I'm doing what's right for my patient," she insisted. As the security guard approached, clearly uncomfortable but determined to do his job, I made a split-second decision. I pulled my phone from where Tara had hidden it in my robe pocket and quickly took photos of Noah, of myself with him, and of the confrontation unfolding. If nothing else, I would have evidence of what was happening. "Give me that phone," my father demanded, reaching for it. I tucked it back into my pocket. "No," I said firmly. "I'm not giving you anything, and I'm not leaving my son." For a tense moment, I thought my father might physically remove me from the NICU. Then the lawyer placed a restraining hand on his arm and whispered something in his ear. Gerald stepped back, his face tight with controlled anger. "Well, discuss this in private," he said. "Nurse, please return my daughter to her room immediately." Tara wheeled me out, followed closely by the security guard. As soon as we were in the elevator, she turned to me urgently. "Listen carefully," she whispered. "I overheard your father and a lawyer discussing guardianship papers this morning. They're planning something for when you're discharged tomorrow. You need to record any interactions with them, document everything." The elevator doors opened, and she fell silent as she pushed me back to my room. Once inside, she quickly checked that we were alone before continuing. "I've called my cousin, who's a patient advocate," she said. "She's going to try to come by later today. In the meantime, keep that phone hidden and try to get evidence of what's really going on." After Tara left, I lay in bed trying to process everything that had happened and formulate a plan. I was still weak from surgery and worried sick about Noah, but I knew I needed to act quickly. Using Tara's phone, I recorded a detailed account of everything that had happened from the wedding until now, making sure to include the physical assault by my father and sister. I hid the phone under my mattress just as Amanda entered the room. My sister had changed out of her wedding dress, but still wore her diamond engagement and wedding rings, which she flashed conspicuously as she set a small vase of flowers on the windowsill. Her expression was a mixture of pity and contempt. "The hospital called to tell us you had an episode," she said, settling into the visitor chair without asking how I was feeling. "Dad sent me to check on you while he deals with the doctors." I decided to play along, hoping to get Amanda to reveal more about their plans. "What kind of episode?" I asked, feigning confusion. Amanda sighed dramatically. "You tried to access the NICU without authorization. Melody, you have to stop fighting the help everyone is trying to give you. It's just making things worse." "I don't understand why I'm not allowed to see my own baby," I said, watching her reaction carefully. "Because you're not stable right now," she replied, as if explaining something to a child. "After what happened at my wedding, the doctors are concerned about your judgment." She leaned forward, lowering her voice. "Between us, Ryan is furious. His family is reconsidering the entire merger with Dad's company because of the scene you caused." "I didn't cause a scene, Amanda," I countered quietly. "You pushed me, and Dad hit me with a tripod. There are witnesses." Amanda laughed, a sharp, brittle sound. "Witnesses? Like who?" "All the guests saw was you having some kind of meltdown and falling. Dad was trying to help you up, and you started screaming accusations." She shook her head. "It's exactly like when we were kids, and you'd make up stories when you got in trouble." As she spoke, I carefully reached under my pillow and activated the recording function on the phone. "I need to understand what's happening, Amanda," I said, keeping my voice even. "Why did Jack never show up at the hospital? He always answers his phone." A flicker of something guilt perhaps crossed Amanda's face before she composed herself. "How should I know? Maybe he finally got tired of dealing with your issues." "I think you do know," I pressed. "Did Dad arrange for Jack to be kept away?" Amanda's eyes widened slightly, and I knew it hit on something important. She recovered quickly, though, smoothing her perfectly manicured hands over her designer jeans. "You're being paranoid," she said dismissively. "Though I will say, the emergency at Jack's office was a stroke of luck. It gave Dad time to handle things properly." "Handle what properly?" I asked, my heart racing. "What is Dad trying to do, Amanda?" For a moment I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, perhaps enjoying the chance to demonstrate her superior knowledge, she leaned in conspiratorially. "Your trust fund," she said. "The one from Mom that you're supposed to get access to when you turn 33 next week. Dad needs it to settle some business issues." I stared at her in disbelief. "Dad is trying to take my inheritance? The money Mom specifically left for me?" Amanda rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic. Hess just borrowing it to cover some temporary shortfalls. The merger with Ryan's family will more than make up for it eventually." "Is that what this is all about?" I asked, the pieces finally starting to fall into place. The guardianship papers, painting me as unstable it's all to get control of Mom's money? Amanda shifted uncomfortably. "It's more complicated than that. Dad made some investments that didn't pan out. There are people who need to be paid off quickly. Hess just doing what needs to be done to protect the family." "What kind of investments?" I pressed. "It's not important," she snapped, standing up abruptly. "What's important is that you cooperate. Sign the papers Dad brings you, and this will all go away." You'll get to see your baby, go home with your husband, get back to your boring little life. As she headed for the door, I called after her. One more thing, Amanda. Why did you push me at the wedding? You could have hurt Noah. She paused, her hand on the doorknob. For a moment, her mask slipped, revealing a glimpse of the scared, insecure person beneath the perfect exterior. It wasn't supposed to happen like that, she admitted quietly. Dad just said to create a distraction, something that would give him leverage over you. I didn't mean for you to fall so hard. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Through the open door, I saw nurses rushing toward the NICU, alarm bells ringing. One of them shouted a room number, Noah's room number. What's happening? I demanded, struggling to get out of bed despite the pain from my incision. Amanda backed away, her face pale. I don't know. I have to find Dad. As she hurried off, I managed to stand, clutching the IV pole for support. A passing nurse tried to urge me back to bed, but I refused. My son needed me. In that moment, my father appeared in the doorway, accompanied by the same lawyer I'd seen earlier. His face was grave, but there was a calculating look in his eyes that chilled me to the bone. Melody, sit down, he ordered. We need to discuss some paperwork immediately. Noah, I gasped. Something's wrong with Noah. Gerald barely glanced toward the commotion down the hall. The doctors are handling it. This is more important right now. He placed a stack of papers on the bedside table. The lawyer stepped forward, pen in hand. Mrs. Walker, these documents grant temporary guardianship of both you and your child to your father, the lawyer explained in a detached professional tone. Given your current mental state and the baby's medical needs, the court is likely to approve this emergency petition. I stared at them in horror. You want me to sign away my rights to my own child while he's in medical distress? My father leaned closer, his voice low and menacing. Listen carefully, Melody. Your son needs specialized care that your insurance won't cover. Sign these papers, and I'll make sure he gets the best treatment money can buy. Refuse, and you're on your own. It was the most terrible choice imaginable. Every instinct screamed at me not to sign. But what if Noah truly needed treatment I couldn't provide? What if my refusal hurt him? With shaking hands, I took the pen, tears blurring my vision as I prepared to sign away everything that mattered to me. That's when the hospital room door burst open with a bang. Jack stood in the doorway, his normally gentle face hardened with fury. Behind him were two strangers, a stern-looking woman in a business suit and a man with a badge clipped to his belt. Get away from my wife, Jack demanded, striding into the room. My father stood his ground, though I noticed his hand quickly gathering up the guardianship papers. Jack, good of you to finally join us, he said smoothly. We're just handling some necessary legal matters for Noah's benefit. The woman stepped forward, extending a business card toward me. Mrs. Walker, I'm Diana Foster, private investigator. Your husband hired me 3 months ago to monitor your father in laws, business activities. Jack moved to my side, taking my hand firmly in his. I suspected Gerald was up to something when he started asking pointed questions about your inheritance, he explained. The emergency at work was a complete fabrication. When I couldn't reach you after the wedding, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. My father attempted to regain control of the situation. This is a private family matter, he said firmly. I'm going to have to ask all of you to leave while my daughter is recovering. The man with the badge stepped forward. I'm Detective Morris, Street Marys County Police. We're investigating an assault that took place at the Grand Plaza wedding venue yesterday evening. I squeezed Jack's hand, hope surging through me for the first time in 24 hours. You know what really happened? I asked. Detective Morris nodded. We have statements from multiple witnesses, including the wedding photographer whose equipment was used in the assault. He also had his backup camera running during the incident. The color drained from my father's face. I was merely trying to help my daughter after she fell, he insisted. She was hysterical, creating a scene at her sister's wedding. Jack released my hand and pulled out his phone. Actually, Gerald, we have much more than just the assault on record. He pressed play on a recording. My father's voice filled the room. The SEC is closing in on the Westland Properties deal. We need to liquidate those accounts before they freeze everything. If we can get control of Melodis Trust Fund, we can cover the discrepancies and settle with the primary investors. Another voice, one I recognized as my father's lawyer, responded. She turns 33 next week. Without her signature or a declaration of incompetence, we can't touch that money. My father charged forward, reaching for the phone. That recording is illegal, he shouted. Detective Morris stepped between them. Actually, sir, Mr. Walker had authorization for surveillance as part of an ongoing fraud investigation. Your daughter, Law's inheritance is only part of the picture. We're also looking at embezzlement, investor fraud, and now assault. As if on cue, the door opened again, and Amanda entered, followed closely by Ryan. She froze when she saw the crowded room, her eyes darting nervously between her father and the detective. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Dad, what's happening?" Ryan stepped forward, his face grim. Your father has been using my family's investment as a front for some very questionable financial maneuvers, Amanda. My father discovered discrepancies in the merger paperwork this morning. Amanda turned to our father, her perfectly composed facade cracking. Dad, is this true? Before Gerald could answer, a nurse rushed into the already crowded room. Mrs. Walker, she said urgently, ignoring everyone else. Your son's condition has stabilized, but the neonatologist needs to speak with you immediately about a treatment option. I struggled to process everything happening around me. My son's life, my father's crimes, Amanda's betrayal. It was overwhelming. Jack slipped his arm around my shoulders, supporting me both physically and emotionally. Go take care of our son, he said gently. I'll handle things here. As the nurse helped me into a wheelchair, my father made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Amanda, tell them what really happened at the wedding, he commanded. Tell them about your sister's history of emotional problems. Amanda looked between her father and her new husband, clearly torn. I could see the calculation in her eyes as she weighed her options, deciding where her best interests now lay. Dad told me to create a distraction at the wedding, she finally said, her voice small but clear. He said we needed leverage to get control of Melodis' inheritance. I pushed her on purpose, but I didn't mean for her to get hurt so badly. I didn't know he was going to hit her. Ryan stepped away from Amanda, disgust evident on his face. You're saying you deliberately caused a pregnant woman, your own sister, to fall, and then stood by while your father assaulted her? Amanda reached for him pleadingly. Ryan, you have to understand. In our family, we do what Dad tells us to do. Always. She turned to me, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry, Melody. I never wanted it to go this far. As I was being wheeled out, I heard my father shout, Amanda, shut your mouth, followed by the distinct sound of Detective Morris reading him his rights. The next few hours passed in a blur of medical consultations and police statements. Noah's condition had indeed stabilized, but he needed specialized treatment for his underdeveloped lungs treatment that was fortunately covered by our insurance, despite my father's claims to the contrary. Jack stayed by my side throughout, filling in the gaps of what had happened. After receiving no response to his calls and texts on the day of the wedding, Head gone directly to our father's house, where Head overheard Gerald on the phone discussing how Head successfully kept Jack away from the wedding and hospital. Jack had immediately contacted Diana Foster, the private investigator Head hired months earlier when Head first became suspicious of Gerald's interest in my inheritance. Together with evidence Shed already gathered of financial misconduct, they had enough to involve the police. The detective had been preparing to approach my father in the coming days when the assault at the wedding accelerated everything. As evening fell, I sat by Noah's incubator in the NICU, Jack beside me, both of us watching the gentle rise and fall of our son's chest. We had been granted full and exclusive custody pending a formal hearing, though given the circumstances, that seemed like a mere formality. A soft knock at the door interrupted our vigil. Amanda stood there, looking uncertain, her perfect appearance now disheveled, eyes red from crying. "Can I talk to you?" she asked hesitantly. Jack started to refuse, but I placed a hand on his arm. "It's okay," I said. "I want to hear what she has to say." Amanda approached cautiously, her eyes fixed on Noah. "Hez beautiful," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, Melody. I never thought Dad would go so far. I never thought he'd hurt you or the baby. But you were willing to help him take my son away from me, I pointed out, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. You pushed me while I was 9 months pregnant. What kind of sister does that? She sank into a chair, covering her face with her hands. I don't know who I am without Dad's approval, she admitted. My whole life has been about being the perfect daughter, doing whatever it took to avoid disappointing him. She looked up, her expression haunted. Do you know what it's like to build your entire identity around pleasing someone who can never be pleased? Despite everything, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Yes, I said quietly. I spent most of my life trying to earn Dad's love too. The difference is, I eventually realized it wasn't worth the price. Amanda nodded, tears streaming down her face. Ryan is annulling the marriage, she said, twisting her wedding ring. He says he can't be with someone capable of what I did to you. I'm sorry, I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. Dad is being held without bail, she continued. The police found evidence of massive financial fraud. Hess looking at serious prison time. She hesitated, then added, I gave a complete statement about the assault. I know it doesn't make up for what I did, but I wanted you to know I'm telling the truth now. As Amanda spoke, I felt suddenly lightheaded, a wave of dizziness washing over me. Jack noticed immediately, calling for a nurse. The last thing I remember before losing consciousness was the sound of alarms and my sister's panicked voice calling my name. 3 months later, I sat on the porch swing of our new home, Noah sleeping peacefully in my arms. The late autumn sunlight filtered through the changing leaves, casting a golden glow over the yard where Jack was raking leaves into a pile. My recovery had been complicated by an infection that developed after my emergency C-section. The doctors believed the stress and trauma had compromised my immune system, leading to a severe postpartum complication that had required another week in the hospital after I collapsed in the NICU. But now, both Noah and I were thriving. Our son had grown from the fragile newborn in the incubator to a healthy, chubby, cheeked 3-month-old with Jack's dimples and my green eyes. The specialized treatment for his lungs had been successful, and his pediatrician was pleased with his development. Jack had used part of my inheritance, which had been released to me on my 33rd birthday the week after Noah's birth, to purchase this small but charming house in a quiet neighborhood across town, far from the memories of what my father had done. Head also left his position at the architectural firm where Head worked for the past decade to start his own design business, something Head dreamed of doing for years. The surprise he had planned to tell me the day of the wedding, the one Head been working on when everything fell apart, was that Head secured financing to open his own studio. Head wanted me to have the option of staying home with Noah or pursuing my own dreams, without financial pressure. As for my father, Gerald was awaiting trial on multiple charges, including financial fraud, embezzlement, and assault. The evidence against him was overwhelming, with investigators uncovering years of criminal activity hidden beneath his respectable facade. He had refused all contact with me since his arrest, maintaining that Head only done what was necessary to protect the family business. Amanda had avoided criminal charges by cooperating fully with the investigation, though she faced civil lawsuits from investors her father had defrauded through her wedding connections. Ryan had gone through with the annulment, unable to reconcile himself with what she had done. The last I heard, she was in therapy, trying to rebuild her life and identity apart from our father's toxic influence. In the weeks after my discharge from the hospital, I'd made a difficult decision regarding Amanda. While I couldn't forget what she'd done, I recognized that she too had been a victim of our father's manipulation, albeit in a different way than I had been. I had agreed to limited, supervised contact with Noah, on the condition that she continue her therapy and demonstrate genuine change. Our first meeting had been awkward and tearful, with Amanda breaking down at the sight of the nephew she'd nearly harmed through her actions. It would take time, perhaps years, to rebuild any semblance of trust between us, but I was willing to leave that door cracked open, if only to break the cycle of estrangement for Noah's sake. One unexpected blessing from the ordeal had been connecting with my mother's side of the family, whom Gerald had systematically cut off after her death. My mother's sister, Aunt Sarah, had reached out after seeing news reports about my father's arrest. Through her, I discovered an entire branch of family I'd barely known, kind, normal people who had tried to maintain contact with my sister and me over the years, only to be rebuffed by my controlling father. Noah's first birthday would be celebrated surrounded by these newfound relatives, along with Jack's warm and loving family who had been my emotional anchor throughout the ordeal. I'd also established a foundation using a portion of my inheritance, dedicated to supporting mothers facing postpartum crises with limited family support. Nurse Tara, who had risked her job to help me in the hospital, was now working with the foundation part, time while continuing her nursing career. As Jack finished with the leaves and climbed the porch steps to join us, I reflected on the final confrontation I'd had with my father a month ago. I'd visited him in the detention center, not for reconciliation but for closure. "Why, Dad?" I'd asked across the sterile visitation table. Was money really worth destroying our family? He had looked at me with the same cold, calculating eyes I'd known my entire life. "You don't understand the pressures I've been under, Melody. Everything I did was to maintain our position, our legacy. By stealing from me? By letting Amanda push me while I was pregnant? By hitting me with a tripod?" I countered, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. For a moment, his facade had cracked, revealing a flicker of something regret, perhaps, or simply frustration at being caught. Then the mask had returned. "If you've come for an apology, you're wasting your time," he said. "I did what I had to do." "I'm not here for an apology, Dad," I told him. "I'm here to forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine. I won't carry the weight of your actions anymore. I won't let what you did define me or my family going forward." As Id stood to leave, Head called after me. "The Walker name means something in this town, Melody. Don't throw away generations of respect and influence because of one misunderstanding." Id turned back one last time. "My son's name is Noah Jack Walker," I said, "and he'll grow up knowing that respect is earned through integrity, not fear. That's the only legacy I'm interested in preserving." Now, as Jack settled beside me on the porch swing, taking my free hand in his, I realized the profound truth I'd discovered through all the pain and betrayal. Family wasn't defined by blood or obligation, but by love and choice. The family wed created Jack, Noah, and I, surrounded by people who truly cared for our well-being, was stronger and more authentic than anything I'd known growing up under my father's roof. Noah stirred in my arms, his eyes fluttering open to gaze up at me with complete trust. In that moment, I made a silent promise to him and to myself. The cycle of manipulation and conditional love that had defined my childhood would end with me. My son would grow up knowing he was valued for himself, not for what he could do or be for others. Jack leaned over to kiss my temple, precisely where the scar from my father's assault had faded to a thin silver line. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. "You looked deep in thought." I smiled, leaning into his warmth. "Just thinking about how sometimes you have to go through the darkest times to find your way to where you truly belong." He nodded, understanding as he always did. "Want to know something crazy?" he asked. "Despite everything that happened, I'm grateful for that day. Not for what they did to you," he clarified quickly, "but because it brought all the truth to light at once. No more secrets, no more manipulation, just us, building something real." As the autumn breeze rustled the leaves around us, I realized he was right. The painful breaking of those toxic bonds had freed us to create something beautiful and authentic. The legacy of control and appearance that my father had valued so highly had crumbled, revealing the hollow core at its center. In its place, we were building a family foundation based on genuine love and acceptance. Noah cooed and reached up to touch my face, his tiny fingers gentle against my cheek. For him, and for the wounded child still inside me, I embraced the hard-won wisdom that had come at such a high price. True family protects and nurtures. It doesn't control and manipulate. Real love empowers. It doesn't diminish. And sometimes, the family we choose is more precious than the one we're born into. What do you think about that life lesson, my friends? Has there been a time when you had to create boundaries with toxic family members to protect yourself and those you love? Comment below with your experiences. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message of hope after family betrayal, share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you the courage to create the family bonds you deserve, whether through blood or through choice.